Fiesty alien girl challenged human to a duel until she lost her virginity instead. The grate slammed shut, the sound of it a final metallic punctuation mark on his shitty day. Jax leaned his head back against the cold pitted stone of the holding cell, the thrum of the alien city vibrating through his skull. Fucking bounty hunters. Fucking backwater systems. Fucking contracts gone sideways. He'd been hired to retrieve a data puck, a simple snatch and grab on a volcanic rock called Korath. Now he was the one who'd been snatched. The air tasted of sulfur and ozone, and the dim red light pulsing from a conduit in the ceiling made everything look like a fresh wound. A shadow fell across the bars. He didn't bother looking up. If you're here to gloat, make it quick. I've got a busy schedule of staring at this wall. A voice, female and sharp as sheared crystal, cut through the gloom. You are the human, the off-worlder who defiled the sanctum of ashes. Jax cracked one eye open. Standing there was a goddess carved from turquoise and fury. She was tall, impossibly lean, with skin the color of a tropical sea. Long bone-white hair fell straight over her shoulders, and her eyes were molten gold. Subtle, iridescent scales shimmered along her high cheekbones and down her neck. She wore a harness of black leather and dark metal that did little to hide the powerful muscles of her torso and arms. Guilty, Jax said, giving her a lazy, insolent smile. Though defiled is a strong word. I was just borrowing something. Didn't see the no smuggler sign on the way in. Her golden eyes narrowed. You speak with a coward's tongue. All mockery, no substance. My name is Zelia, daughter of the first spire, keeper of the embers. Jax, son of a bartender, keeper of a hangover. Pleasure. He made a mock salute with 2 fingers. Your titles are very impressive. Do you have them on a business card? Her expression didn't change, but a faint, dangerous heat began to radiate from her. You do not comprehend the gravity of your crime. Trespass is paid for in blood. By our law, I have the right to challenge you, to claim your life as restitution. Let me guess. Jax sighed, finally pushing himself to his feet and walking to the bars. He was close enough now to smell her, a strange, clean scent like hot rocks and spice. A duel to the death? The Corvash, she corrected, her voice low and resonant. A trial of blood and bone. One yields or one is broken. It will take place at the next lava flow. Your compliance is not required. He gripped the bars, his knuckles white. The sarcastic armor was still there, but a cold dread was seeping underneath. He'd seen the weapons her guards carried. He was a scrapper, a survivor, not a gladiator. And if I win, he asked, the question a raw challenge. A flicker of something, surprise, interest, danced in her golden eyes. It was the first crack in her perfect dominant facade. The victor claims the spoils, she said, her voice dropping to a husky whisper. If you were to best me, human, you would claim me. Jax stared at her, at the curve of her lips and the sheer, lethal confidence in her stance. Fuck me, he muttered, not entirely as a curse. You people really don't do things by halves, do you? She gave him a slow, predatory smile. We do not. 2 guards, built like armored rhinos, dragged Jax from his cell. They didn't speak his language, which was probably for the best. He wasn't in the mood for small talk. They stripped him of his tattered shipsuit and shoved him under a spray of what felt like lukewarm chemical cleaner. Then they threw a harness at him, similar to Zelia's but less ornate, and a pair of loose dark pants. As they marched him down a long obsidian corridor, their guttural chatter was punctuated by a few words he'd picked up. Korvash, Zelia, shame, break. He got the gist. They were taking him to the slaughter. He could hear a low roar, the sound of 1,000 voices chanting in unison. The corridor opened into a vast cavern, and the heat hit him like a physical blow. They were in a natural arena, a massive caldera lit by the hellish glow of slow-moving lava rivers that crisscrossed the floor. High above, carved into the cavern walls, were tiers packed with thousands of turquoise-skinned aliens. On a high dais draped in ceremonial robes, sat a council of elders, their expressions as hard and unforgiving as the rock they sat on. And in the center of the arena, limbering up with a fluid, deadly grace, was Zelia. She held a wicked-looking blade, curved like a fang, and moved as if the searing heat were a gentle spring breeze. Jax's mouth went dry. This wasn't a duel. It was a public execution with extra steps. "You enjoying the show?" he snarled at one of the guards. The guard just grunted and shoved him forward, down a ramp and onto the heated black sand of the arena floor. The roar of the crowd intensified. They were screaming her name. "Zelia! Zelia!" He was just the foreign meat for the grinder. He was given a blade of his own, a straight, heavy piece of sharpened metal. It felt clumsy and brutish in his hand compared to her elegant weapon. He rolled his shoulders, trying to loosen the knots of tension. This was just another fight. A bigger, weirder, probably shorter fight than most, but a fight nonetheless. Survive. That was the only rule that ever mattered. Zelia turned to face him, her golden eyes locking onto his from across the sand. The crowd noise faded to a dull hum in his ears. There was nothing else in this volcanic hellhole but him and her. She raised her blade in a formal salute to the elders, then to the crowd. Then she pointed it at him. "Human," her voice boomed, magically amplified to fill the entire cavern. "Your life is forfeit. Prepare to offer it to the sacred fire." Yeah, get on with it," Jax muttered, spitting on the black sand. He gave her a rude, two-fingered gesture he was pretty sure was universal. A wave of angry hisses rose from the crowd, but he saw it again in her eyes. That flicker of something other than ritualistic fury. A spark of genuine, personal anger. Good. He preferred anger to ceremony. It was more honest. The signal was a deafening blast from a massive horn. Zelia didn't hesitate. She moved like a blur, a turquoise streak against the glowing red backdrop. Her blade sliced the air where his head had been a second before. Jax dove and rolled, the heat of the sand stinging his bare skin. He came up in a crouch, his own blade held defensively. She was fast, faster than any human. He'd have to be smarter. She came at him again, a whirlwind of precise, deadly strikes. He parried, his arms jarring with the force of each impact. The clang of metal on metal echoed in the arena. This wasn't a fight. It was a dance, and she knew all the steps. He was just trying not to trip over his own feet and get impaled. "Is this all a human can offer?" she taunted, her voice tight with exertion. "Scurrying like a frightened sand rat?" "I'm pacing myself, princess," he grunted back, blocking another blow that would have taken his arm off. "Wouldn't want to tire you out too quickly." He saw his opening. She overcommitted on a high swing, leaving her midsection exposed for a fraction of a second. He didn't try to stab her. Instead, he dropped his sword and lunged, tackling her around the waist. It was a dirty, desperate move, and it worked. They went down in a tangle of limbs, her surprised gasp lost in the roar of the crowd. He had the advantage, but only for a moment. She was impossibly strong, her muscles coiling like steel springs beneath him. He tried to pin her arms, but it was like wrestling a machine. Her turquoise skin was hot to the touch, and he could see the faint, pulsing glow intensify along her neck and shoulders. It was her rage, manifesting as light. She slammed an elbow into his ribs, forcing the air from his lungs. He rolled off, gasping, and scrambled for his sword. She was already on her feet, her white hair wild, her golden eyes blazing with incandescent fury. The mask of the calm, ritualistic heiress was gone. This was personal now. "You fight with no honor," she snarled. "Honor's for people who aren't about to be turned into a shish kebab," he shot back, circling her warily. He'd pissed her off. Good. Anger made people sloppy. But as he looked at her, he saw more than just rage. He saw the weight of all those eyes on her. The crowd, the elders. He saw the pressure. This wasn't just about killing him. It was about proving herself. And in that moment of insight, he saw not just an enemy, but a person trapped in a cage just as surely as he had been. A cage of tradition and expectation. It didn't make him want to die for her, but it changed the texture of the fight. They were both bleeding now. A shallow cut on his arm, a deeper one on her thigh that she seemed to be ignoring completely. Sweat plastered his hair to his forehead and mixed with the grime on his skin. Her turquoise skin was slick, shimmering under the lava light. The initial burst of adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep, aching exhaustion. The fight had devolved from a series of sharp exchanges to a brutal, grinding grapple. He disarmed her with a lucky twist of his blade, sending her curved sword spinning away into the black sand. The crowd gasped. Instead of backing off, she surged forward, slamming into him with her full body weight. They crashed against a jagged pillar of obsidian at the edge of the arena, the impact knocking the wind out of him. He managed to get a hand around her throat, not to choke her, but to hold her off. Her pulse throbbed against his palm, a frantic hammering beat. Her body was pressed tight against his, her hips locked with his, her chest heaving. "Had enough, princess?" he gasped out, his voice raw. Her face was inches from his. He could see the flecks of amber in her golden eyes, the faint parting of her lips as she fought for breath. The angry glow of her skin was a hot, radiant aura surrounding them. "The Corvash," she hissed, her voice a low growl, "is not over until one yields or is broken." There was no give in her, no hint of surrender. But beneath the defiance, he felt a tremor run through her body, a subtle vibration of something else. Fear, excitement? He couldn't tell. He was too busy trying to process the sheer, overwhelming proximity of her. Her spicy scent filled his senses, intoxicating and alien. The feeling of her skin, her strength, the raw life humming through her, was more potent than any drug. From the corner of his eye, he saw the elders on their dais. They were leaning forward, their expressions stone-cold and furious. This wasn't the clean, honorable victory they had expected. This was messy, intimate, disgraceful. He eased the pressure on her throat, his thumb stroking the glowing, scaled skin. A shiver went through her, a reaction that had nothing to do with combat. "Yield," he said again. But this time it wasn't a demand. It was a plea, a way out for both of them. For a second he thought she might. Her eyes softened, the fury dimming. But then she looked past him, at the disapproving faces of the elders, and her expression hardened again. "Never," she whispered. But the word lacked its earlier conviction. The duel was still on, but the stakes had changed. It wasn't just about life and death anymore. She moved with sudden, desperate speed. A thin, stiletto-like blade appeared in her hand, seemingly from nowhere. A ritual dagger, hidden in her harness. She slashed with it, and he felt a sharp, burning pain in his side. He cursed, stumbling back, clutching the wound. It wasn't deep, but it was enough to break their stalemate. "You little bitch," he snarled, a fresh wave of adrenaline surging through him. He lunged, not with his sword, but with his body. He caught her wrist, twisting it until she cried out and the dagger clattered to the ground. He used her own momentum against her, spinning her around and tackling her from behind. They fell together, rolling down a slight incline and into a deep, shadowy alcove carved into the arena wall. They were momentarily hidden from the direct line of sight of the elders and most of the crowd. He ended up on top of her, pinning her to the warm sand. Her back was arched, her body struggling beneath his. He had her. He had finally, unequivocally won. He leaned down, his mouth next to her ear, his breath ragged. "Yield," he growled, the word a vibration against her skin. "Say it." She thrashed beneath him, a wild, cornered thing. "No," she panted, "I will not." But her struggles were weakening. The fight was draining out of her, replaced by something else, something raw and electric that sparked in the space between their bodies. He could feel the soft curves of her beneath the hard muscle. He could feel the frantic beat of her heart against his chest. He still had her wrist pinned, but his other hand had found its way to her hip, his fingers digging into the firm flesh. The world narrowed to this dark space. The roar of the crowd, the heat of the lava, it all faded away. There was only the scent of her, the heat of her, the fight in her. And then it happened. He wasn't sure who started it. Maybe it was the way her hips moved against his, an involuntary motion that was part struggle, part something more. Maybe it was the way his thumb brushed over the inside of her wrist, where her pulse was a wild drum. He lowered his head, and his lips found hers. It wasn't a kiss. It was an attack, a continuation of the duel. It was hard, angry, demanding. He expected her to bite him, to fight back. For a second she did. Her body went rigid, but then a low moan escaped her throat and she kissed him back. Her mouth was as fierce and demanding as his, a desperate, hungry claiming. It was a surrender, just not the one either of them had anticipated. The kiss broke the duel. It shattered the ritual. His hand left her wrist and tangled in her long white hair, pulling her head back. Her hands, now free, didn't push him away. They clawed at his back, pulling him closer. This wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about consumption. He tore at the leather straps of her harness, his knuckles grazing her hot, glowing skin. She ripped at the waistband of his pants, her movements urgent and clumsy. It was a frenzy of torn fabric and desperate need, fueled by adrenaline and a primal connection forged in violence. He pushed into her, and they both cried out. Her, from the sharp, sudden pain of her first time. Him, from the sheer, overwhelming sensation of it. Her body was tight, hot, and unwelcoming for a moment. And then it yielded, accepting him. The shadowy alcove became a sacred, secret space. The duel continued, but the weapons were now their bodies. Every thrust was a blow, every gasp a parry. Her legs wrapped around his waist, locking him to her, claiming him just as fiercely as he was claiming her. The faint glow of her skin brightened until it illuminated their small space in a soft turquoise light. He looked down at her face. Her golden eyes were wide, dazed, filled with a mixture of pain, shock, and a dawning, terrifying pleasure. This wasn't the proud warrior heiress. This was someone raw, new, and completely undone. He felt a surge of something other than lust, a fierce, protective possessiveness. He had broken her, but not in the way the Corvash demanded. He had taken something infinitely more precious than her submission in combat. As he moved within her, he felt the strange resonance build between them, a hum that seemed to vibrate from his bones to hers. It was more than just physical. It was a connection, a link being forged in the heat of their desperate union. He climaxed with a guttural roar, pouring all his rage, fear, and confusion into her. Her body arched against his, a choked cry escaping her lips as a wave of alien pleasure crashed over her. In that moment, something clicked into place between them, a bond, sharp and undeniable as a blade locking them together. The fight was over. The duel was won, and lost, and utterly, irrevocably changed. The world swam back into focus for Zelia. The pain was a dull, throbbing ache between her legs, but it was overshadowed by a profound, seismic shock. The Corvash was complete. The ancient, sacred rite of her people had been concluded, but not by blood, not by a yielding cry. It had been concluded in the most intimate, most forbidden way possible. In the shadows of the arena, she, a daughter of the first spire, had given her body, her first, to an alien captive. The act was a desecration, and yet it felt like a sacrament. A deep humming resonance now connected her to the human collapsed on top of her. It was a physical and psychic link, a bond mark forged not by ritual words, but by shared climax. She could feel the ragged rhythm of his heart as if it were her own. She could feel the lingering echo of his surprise and his fierce, possessive satisfaction. He was no longer just Jack's, the sarcastic off-worlder. He was hers, and she was his. She pushed him off gently, the movement stiff and sore. He rolled onto his back beside her, breathing heavily, his eyes closed. In the dim turquoise light radiating from her own skin, she saw him clearly for the first time. The exhaustion etched on his face, the vulnerability in the line of his jaw. He was just a man, a stubborn, infuriating, and impossibly brave man who had met her fury with his own, and had not broken. He had bent, and in doing so, had bent the entire world with him. She sat up, pulling the tattered remains of her harness over her chest. The arena was strangely silent. The roaring chants had died. The air was thick with a stunned, waiting tension. She risked a glance out of the alcove. The sight made her blood run cold. The entire crowd was on its feet, staring at their shadowed corner. And on the high dais, the elders were no longer just displeased. Their faces were masks of pure, apoplectic rage. The patriarch, her own father, was pointing a trembling, accusatory finger directly at them. The duel was supposed to end with a clean death or an honorable submission. Not this silent, shameful, intimate conclusion. She had failed. She had disgraced her lineage, her people, and the sacred fire itself. But as she looked at Jax, at the man now tied to her very soul, she felt a surge of defiance. She had not been broken. She had been remade. Jax opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Zelia kneeling beside him. her expression a maelstrom of emotions he couldn't begin to decipher. The second thing he saw was the tip of a very large, very sharp spear, inches from his nose. Guards, at least a dozen of them, forming a tight circle around their alcove, their faces grim. The party was officially over. He groaned and sat up, his side screaming in protest where she'd stabbed him. "Well," he said, his voice hoarse, "this is awkward." The elders were descending from their dais, their ceremonial robes sweeping behind them like thunderclouds. The head honcho, a grim-faced bastard who looked like he'd been weaned on sour milk, stopped before them. His eyes, a pale, cold gold, were fixed on Zilia. "You have defiled this sacred ground," the elder boomed, his voice dripping with venom. "You have disgraced your name. And you," he spat, turning his gaze on Jax, "abomination. You will be purged in the purifying flames." He motioned to the guards. "Seize them." The guards moved forward, but before they could lay a hand on him, Zilia was on her feet. She stood in front of Jax, a shield of turquoise flesh and white-hot fury. She held up a hand, and to Jax's astonishment, the guards actually hesitated. Her voice, when she spoke, was not the voice of a disgraced daughter. It rang with a new, unshakable authority. "The Corvash is concluded," she declared, her words echoing through the silent arena. The crowd murmured, shifting. "The victor has claimed his prize." She paused, then turned her head to look at Jax, a dangerous, challenging glint in her golden eyes. "Or," she said, her voice dropping but losing none of its power, "the victor is the prize." Jax stared at her. What the hell was she doing? She'd just flipped the entire script. She wasn't his spoils. She was claiming him. The elder patriarch's face turned a shade of mottled purple. "Insolence, the ritual is void. He is an unclean thing. He will die, and you will be stripped of your name and cast into the ash wastes." "You cannot," Zilia said, her voice eerily calm. "To harm him now is to harm me. The bond is sealed." "Lies. A bond requires the ancient rites, the vows. There are older laws than the ones you preach, Father," she said, the word father dripping with scorn. "Laws written in blood and seed, not on dusty scrolls." The elder snarled and gave a sharp, angry command. "Kill the human. She will learn obedience." The guards raised their spears. Jax scrambled to his feet, grabbing the heavy sword he'd dropped. This was it. A glorious, stupid last stand. But as the guards surged forward, Zilia moved. She didn't attack them. She grabbed Jax's hand, her grip like steel. "This way," she yelled, pulling him toward a dark crack in the arena wall he hadn't noticed before. "Move." They plunged into the darkness, the angry shouts of the guards echoing behind them. The tunnel was narrow, slick with moisture, and smelled of sulfur and wet earth. Zilia moved with a certainty that told him she knew these passages. He just focused on keeping up, his hand still clasped in hers. It felt strangely right. "You have a knack for making an exit," he panted as they ran. "And you have a knack for turning a simple duel into a political incident," she shot back, not missing a beat. They were a team. It was insane, but it was true. The bond between them, the weird hum he could still feel under his skin, made them move in a strange, unspoken synchronicity. When a guard rounded a corner ahead of them, Jax didn't even need a warning. He shoved Zilia behind him and met the guard's charge with the flat of his sword, sending the alien staggering. Zilia was there a second later, using the pommel of her recovered ritual dagger to strike the guard precisely at the base of his skull. He went down without a sound. "Nice work," Jax said, genuinely impressed. "You fight better when you're not trying to impress your dad. And you fight better when you're not just fighting for money," she retorted, pulling him deeper into the labyrinth. They found refuge in a small dead-end cavern lit by glowing geothermal crystals that pulsed with a soft blue light. For the first time since the duel began, they were safe. Alone. He slumped against a wall, his body screaming with exhaustion and pain. Zilia began tending to the gash in his side, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Okay," he said, wincing as she cleaned the wound with a strip of her own torn clothing. "What the hell was all that about a bond? And the victor is the prize bullshit?" She looked up at him, her golden eyes serious. "It is not bullshit. It is an ancient clause of the Corvash, from the first law, a time before the patriarchs corrupted the rituals for their own power. Go on." The Corvash was originally a trial of resonance, not just of strength, she explained, her voice low. A test to find a worthy mate. If the duel ends not in death but in consummation, and if the challenger is a virgin, the bond is absolute. The victor doesn't claim a thrall, they forge a partner. To kill one is to kill the other. Our life forces are now intertwined. Jax stared at her, his mind reeling. He'd come here to steal a data puck. Instead, he'd accidentally gotten soul married to a warrior princess by having angry life-or-death sex in the middle of a gladiator arena. You have got to be fucking kidding me. My people do not joke about the first law, she said flatly. My father and the elders want to maintain their power. A bond like ours, one forged outside their control with an off-worlder, is a threat to their entire system. They will not stop until we are both dead. He looked at their joined hands, at the faint turquoise glow of her skin, at the fierce determination in her eyes. His life was a mess. It was complicated and dangerous, and completely fucked. But for the first time in a very long time, he wasn't alone in it. The sound of armored footsteps echoed down the tunnel. They were out of time. They've found us, Jax said, grabbing his sword. Standing up sent a fresh wave of agony through his side. Zelia was already on her feet, her ritual dagger held in a reverse grip. They sent Kyle, she whispered, her eyes fixed on the tunnel entrance. Their champion, my father's right hand. A massive figure blocked the entrance to the cavern, silhouetted against the distant red glow of the arena. He was bigger than the other guards, his armor inscribed with symbols of rank. He held a massive double-bladed axe. Eris Zelia. Kale's voice was a low rumble. The Patriarch offers you one final chance. Give us the alien, suffer your penance. You may yet salvage some of your honor. My honor is not for my father to grant, Zelia called back, her voice ringing with defiance. I have forged my own. Kale stepped into the blue light of the crystal cavern. His eyes fell on Jax and he sneered. With this soft-skinned scavenger? This scavenger defeated me in the Corvash, Kale, Zelia said, moving to stand shoulder to shoulder with Jax. A feat you have never managed. The taunt hit its mark. Kyle roared and charged. This wasn't a duel. It was an execution. But they weren't two separate fighters anymore. Jax met the charge head-on, his heavy sword clashing with the axe in a shower of sparks. The impact nearly broke his arms, but it bought Zelia the opening she needed. She darted in under Kale's guard, her dagger flashing, slicing at the exposed joints of his armor. He bellowed in pain and swatted her away, but Jax was there, pressing the attack, forcing the champion to focus on him. They moved around each other, a deadly dance of 2 against 1. He was the anchor, she was the blade. He took the heavy blows, she delivered the killing cuts. Finally, Jax hooked his sword behind Kale's knee and pulled, while Zelia drove her dagger deep into the champion's neck. He fell with a shuddering crash. Silence. Bruised, bleeding, and utterly exhausted. They stood over the fallen champion. They had won. They made their way back to the arena. The crowd was still there, held in place by the sheer, unprecedented drama. Zelia, with Jax at her side, walked to the center of the arena floor and faced the dais. The Corvash is fulfilled, she announced, her voice filled with a power that silenced the entire cavern. The bond is sealed. I claim my place, not as heiress, but as a warrior bound by the first law, with my mate. She held up her hand, which was still clasped in his. The Patriarch looked at them, at his dead champion, at the defiant look on his daughter's face. He was beaten. His authority, shattered by an ancient law he had forgotten and a human he had underestimated. He sank back onto his throne, defeated. Later in the chambers that were now theirs, Zelia tended to his wounds properly. He was no longer a prisoner. He was a prince consort, or whatever the hell they called it. It was absurd. So, he said, breaking the silence as she wrapped a fresh bandage around his ribs. Does this mean I have to sit through a lot of boring council meetings? Zelia looked at him, and for the first time he saw a genuine smile touch her lips. It transformed her face. Only the ones, she said, shoving him lightly. Where we sentence my father to cleaning the lava vents for the next cycle. Jax laughed, a real, honest laugh. It was a fucked up situation on a fucked up planet. But as he looked at the fierce, incredible alien woman who was now inextricably a part of him, he figured he could learn to live with it.